Welcome to the Cook's Domain. Today I'm going to cook a bolognese ragu. Now I know people are thinking, everybody knows how to make bolognese. It's a staple here in the UK. People cook it all the time. Well, I can tell you now that just frying off some minced meat and adding some tomato paste or a can of tomatoes, a couple of dashes of Worcestershire sauce is not a bolognese. I don't think anyone in Italy would even recognise it as a bolognese. It's a very British bolognese, I guess. The method I'm going to use to cook this is almost identical to the authentic traditional method. I will tell you what I'm doing different so that if you wish to cook the authentic method, you can following my recipe. And I'll show you what are the extra additions that I'm going to add to make this better. But I'm not taking it outside the realms of bolognese. There won't be mushrooms in it. There's no courgettes in it. There's no eggs in it. And there's no Worcestershire sauce in it, because Worcestershire sauce has quite a particularly strong flavour, which takes you outside the realms of bolognese. So anyone who's eaten a real bolognese would eat a version with Worcestershire sauce and would not say that this was bolognese. They'd say it's something else. It's another meaty, tomatoey kind of sauce, but not bolognese. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to stay within the realms of a bolognese. And I'd like to think that if I could taste test this in Italy, Italians would in general look upon it quite favourably in taste. They might look at me with disgust when I tell them what I've done, but at least when they try it, they'll go, wow, this is a really good bolognese. What did you do? And it's very close to the authentic version. Okay, so what are the differences? Well, and don't take me wrong, people do what I'm about to do in Italy. I'm not inventing this recipe, by the way. It's just not considered the authentic recipe. And what are those differences? Number one for me is the addition of pancetta. I'm going to add some pancetta. I'm going to cut it extremely small. I want it to melt into my sauce, and it's just going to ramp up that meaty flavor. And I don't know, I just think it makes the bolognese have an extra dimension with that kind of a smoked cured kind of taste that this has. It just adds that extra layer of dimension to the sauce and just makes it better, in my opinion. The other thing I'm going to do is add herbs. Very tiny amounts, don't take me wrong. In no way am I going to make this be herby. Authentic bolognese has no herbs in it. There's no oregano in it. There's no oregano. There's no basil in it. There's no thyme. There's no herbs in it whatsoever. Again, when I've cooked the authentic and it's nice, I just feel like it's lacking some sort of depth. And so I add a little bit of herbs, but not enough to make it herby. I don't want you to be able to eat and go, oh God, there's strong in oregano, or it's strong in basil. I don't want that, right? But it will give an extra layer of something that just brings the whole thing together and makes it taste really, really good. I'm totally on board though with the fact that by adding things, you're technically changing something. And I'm a big fan of this type of thinking. As you know, I did a cacio e pepe video, and in that I don't add garlic, I don't add oil, it just isn't necessary. And I think it changes that dish to a degree where you're no longer within the realms of what a cacio e pepe is, and it becomes something else. We're not doing that with this bolognese, okay? If I was to put a lot of pancetta into this, then it's technically a ragu pancetta, right? It wouldn't be a bolognese ragu, right? We're not going to put a huge amount. So those are the two changes that I'll be making to the dish. Everything else will be almost identical to the traditional authentic way, with one more difference, not ingredient as in method. The Italian method is to create your, to cook your soffritto. Soffritto is basically the Italian word for like the mirepoix, Holy Trinity, carrots, onion, celery, in some olive oil, fried off, and then you start adding your other ingredients and you add your meat. Problem with that is you can't have the heat too high, which means you grate your meat. And I've even heard Italian chefs in online videos say to grate it and cook it, to grate it and cook it. And this boggles my mind. Again, it tells me that a lot of chefs have just been taught how to do something and they're not really thinking about what they're doing. They just know this is the way and this is the way they're going to do it. Don't ever grate meat in a pan. To me, that's madness. We want the Maillard reaction. We want to brown our meat. So the way to do that is to fry it off in a high heat, get it nice and browned, Come on, we all know how great a crust is on a steak, for example. What extra dimension of flavor that brings. That's what we want to do to this. We want that flavor. So we're going to brown it on a high heat, take the meat out, put it to the side, let the temperature of the pan come down, and then from that moment onwards, everything I'll be doing will be in the traditional method. So I'll be doing my sofrito, then I'll re-add the meat, we'll add the wine, we'll add the sauces, etc., the tomatoes, etc., and everything else in that respect will be within the vein of the traditional method. Now, I'm using 50% pork mince, 50% beef mince. So I have 500 grams here in total, so 250 grams of pork, 250 grams of beef. There are other combinations that you can use. Some regions in Italy probably do a little bit more beef than pork. I think Bologna itself, it's more pork heavy than beef. And also you can add veal if you can get it. Most places in the UK don't really sell it anymore. You have to go to a butcher specifically to get veal. And it's also really expensive. It's a nice addition, and if you want to do that, then just put 250 grams, say, of pork, and 150 grams of beef, and another 100 grams of veal. It's up to you what combination you want to use, but I definitely recommend at the very least you do pork and beef mix. I'm doing 50-50 here. Our other ingredients are a cup of red wine, some milk. And I know some people are going, I've never put milk in bolognese. Believe me, there's supposed to be milk in bolognese. And it's an incredible addition. Full fat milk, the fattest, fullest milk you can get, that's what you want to use. I'm using this Jersey milk, this gold top type. I think it's just wonderful, and it's just going to add a richness, and it just makes a velvety kind of sauce. As well as that, we're going to be using tomato puree and, most importantly, passata. Now, you can use chopped tomatoes. So you could say chopped tomatoes, like the kind that come in a can, passata, and the puree. But if there's one you're not going to have, it has to be either the puree or the canned tomatoes. You really need to use the sieved tomato passata. Either make your own or just buy a bottle of it, but you really need the passata. Our only other ingredients is going to be water, and a lot more than this, by the way. And salt and pepper. That's basically everything you need to make what I would consider an amazing bolognese. Okay, so with everything prepared, we have grated our 2 carrots, and I do that so that it cooks easier, melts into our sauce easier. My celery as well, cut it up quite finely and chopped it up. Again, another ingredient that I just want to melt into that sauce and just create those flavors that we want. And I also chopped up the onion. I had a little bit of red onion in the fridge, and I thought, let's chop that up as well and get that used so we're not wasting anything or it going bad. So I've got a little bit of red onion in there as well, but it's basically an onion and a quarter that's in here. So that's all ready to go. Also, my pancetta, which I have cut up and run a knife through many times. It's almost like mush, and that's what we want, because we want this to melt also into our sauce. This is 40 grams of pancetta. Okay, so now we're going to start cooking, and the first thing we want to do is brown our mince. Let's get our hob onto a very high heat. Now, you would ordinarily use extra virgin olive oil to make this recipe, and we will be adding some at some point, but this is for the browning. We want the Maillard reaction. Extra virgin olive oil has a low smoke point and will go crazy. We don't want that, so I'm going to be using rapeseed oil. Okay, so literally just a couple of drops of oil, and just spread that around just to coat the surface of your pan. That's all it is. It's not for the purposes of frying. You don't want a lot in here. That will be just plenty. Okay, let's put a little bit down and see how hot this is. Well, we hear noises, so that's good. So just start grabbing your meat and putting it into the pan and just squish it down. Try not to touch the pan itself and burn yourselves. But we're trying to increase the surface area. We want as much of the meat to make contact with the surface so that we can brown the mince. Okay, now that we've got some colour on there, We want to turn the heat down to low, and we want to take all of this meat out and keep it to one side. We can turn it up slightly now to between medium and low. We want to add just a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. You don't want a lot, just a thin coating along the bottom. Now all this stuff here on the bottom, that's good stuff, and we don't want to lose any of that. Now before the oil gets too hot, we want to add our onions now. And the reason for that is we don't want to fry them, we don't want them to be crispy, we want them to soften and become golden. Okay, we can now add the celery, and our carrots. Okay, once all our vegetables have got a coating of oil, and we just want them to soften, we're not frying them. I like to push them out of the way because they've brought down the heat, and we can now add our pancetta. Now the point of the pancetta, we don't want to fry it off, we don't want crispy pancetta pieces. We want the heat to slowly melt the fat and render it out, and then the meat will slowly soften and just become part of our sauce. Once the pancetta started to go quite translucent and the fat has started to render, if anything, it's starting to disappear. Now we don't want it to burn, so what I'm going to do now is mix it in with our vegetables. Our pan is starting to get quite hot, which isn't a problem, but it could start burning our veg. So what we want to do is introduce liquid to protect that. And the way to do it is to add salt. So a few large pinches of salt. And what that will do is draw the moisture out of our vegetables. Now there are some who might add pepper at this stage. I don't, because I don't want my coarse pepper burning at the bottom and causing any issues. It's not the time for pepper now. So what we can do now is just spread this out and just let the heat soften it up a little more. About another 4 minutes, 5 minutes. After the vegetables have released their moisture and that's starting to dry up again, we can now add our cup of wine. You're going to have to turn the heat up a little bit for this because the wine is cool and it will bring down the temperature. So I'm going to turn the heat up to hot. It's like a medium high. And we'll pour our wine in. And just mix that in. And use the wine to just help deglaze the pan. Pick up all that good stuff off the bottom. And once it starts to boil quite rapidly, we can turn our heat back down to medium. And all we want to do is evaporate the alcohol and reduce the wine. Okay, so as you can see, we drastically reduce the red wine. But before we get to that point where this is completely dry and starts to burn everything, we can now move on to the next step, which is to take our beautifully browned mince, a couple of grinds of pepper, mix that in as well. To that we want to add a pinch of basil, just a small pinch, and a pinch of oregano, again just a small pinch. We're also adding 3 tablespoons of our tomato puree, mix that in, and to that now we can add our tomato puree. Now this is cool, so we can raise the temperature, our tomato passata I mean, sorry. And then quarter fill the bottle with water and shake it so that we can get all the tomato out of the bottle. And pour that in as well. And we want to add more water. And we're going to be doing this a lot through this process. As much water in there as we can. That was half a litre. So mix that in. This should take 4 hours. to come together, to soften that meat, to make this just an amazing bolognese sauce. But before we put the lid, we're going to wait for this to start bubbling so that we know we've reached temperature. Then we can turn it down to just under medium low really, between medium and low, and put the lid on. Okay, so we're getting the bubbling coming up, and that's even after I've stirred it to make sure there's no hot spots, so all of the heat is roughly the same. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add the lid and turn it down to medium low. Without a lid, leave it on medium, but also you're going to have to be topping it up with water more often. Okay, so it's been our first hour of the simmer, and we just want to check on the water level and give it a stir. As you can see with the lid on, we're not going to have to replace water that often, but if you were doing it with the lid off, then it probably dried up quite a lot and you would have to add more water. But for the moment we seem to be doing okay. I don't feel anything is stuck at the bottom. This is coming along nicely, so just a little stir, lid back on, leave it for another hour. Okay, as we get to the last half hour of a 4-hour simmering, I want to give it one final mix. No need to add any more water. Now what we're trying to do is dry it out. So we're going to leave the lid off for the next half hour and slowly simmer till it becomes a much drier consistency. See, right now it's quite wet. Might take a little more than half an hour, but that's okay. And we'll see what that looks like. The only thing is now, as this gets drier, it has more chance of burning. So now we need to be over it, giving it a stir every few minutes, just to make sure it doesn't stick at the bottom as it dries out and doesn't burn. Okay, as you can see, this is a lot drier now. And it's time for our last ingredient, which is 200 milliliters of full fat creamy milk. Just pour that straight in and mix it around. All we need to do now is let that simmer until we get this down to the right consistencies that we want, which is a lot drier than what it is again. As we can see, it's thickened up nicely. It's got nice and dry. We've evaporated all of the water. All we need to do now is a little quick taste test for salt and pepper. Just a little bit of salt. Just a few grains of pepper. Mix that in. Have a quick taste test. Perfect. Okay, all we need to do now is cook up some pasta and make our bolognese ragu ready for serving. So what we're going to do is add a couple of spoons of our bolognese. Put that in the bottom there. And we want to turn the heat on to like a medium heat. And we want to start bringing it over the pasta and putting it into the bowl. Don't worry about draining it too much. It's okay to bring some of that pasta water over. That starch will just help loosen our sauce a little bit, and it will also make the dish so delicious. Okay, so let's start mixing this around. We've got a little bit of that starchy water in there as well. Look at the way that carries that sauce. And there we go. I think this is ready. We can now serve. And there we have it. A beautiful plate of pappardelle pasta with our bolognese ragu. All we've got to do now is try it and see how good it is. Now, before we do that, we want to add just a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Now, I'm going to say something about this. Please don't buy the silly Italian hard cheese box thingies with the holes on top that you can buy in the shop. That stuff is not nice. It actually smells rotten to me, but it's not a very nice cheese. And I looked at it once and I calculated that for the weight, it is no less expensive than actually buying real Parmesan. It's a trick. They clearly think, people think, well, I'm not going to buy real Parmesan, it's expensive. I'll get this fake stuff. And it costs less because this costs, say, a few pounds, and that's like 50p. But where you get a few 100 grams here, you get like 30 grams in one of those little pots. Do the calculation. It's rubbish being sold for as much money as real Parmesan. Now, if you don't want to use real Parmesan, or you think it's expensive, buy Grana Padano. It comes in the same sort of size type blocks. It is cheaper, it's milder in flavor. It's maybe if you think it's too strong, use Grana Padano, right? You can buy that in all your supermarkets. But if you like Parmesan, or if you really see that you appreciate how good Parmesan is, get Parmesan. It's amazing. And grate that fresh over your pasta, which is what we're going to do now. So start giving that a little scraping here. Perfect. And the last addition for me, just a little sprinkling of black pepper over the top. And there we have it. Let's give it a go. Oh God, I'm looking forward to this. Especially the pasta. As Italians would do. That's so good. What makes this truly exceptional here for me isn't just that the sauce is incredible, tender, savory, deep. It's not flat like the type we make usually here in the UK, which takes us 20 minutes. Fry up some beef, throw in a can of tomatoes, mix it all up, and it's done. It has like a chewy, rubbery bits of meat and very tomatoey, and that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be meaty, and the sauce is incredible. But I know there's some people who are going to make this sauce and think, yeah, it's better. Was it worth the 4 hours? I can understand that. It is better, but for some people, maybe 4 hours to make that. Is it worth it? For me, yes, and I'll always make my bolognese because I think it's incredible. I'll tell you where the real surprise is when you do it. It's the pasta. That is so different from what you get in a store, from that dry stuff we get in stores. It is soft, it is light, but springy with a bite. It's unlike pasta in a box. It really is. It's something so much better, so much more delightful, with such a better flavor. Just look at how that carries the sauce. Can't tell you how good this is. I really can't. It is exceptional. Italians, you have made something here that is an absolute world beater. Well, you already know that.